All right, hi there, and welcome to MSL 202, Lesson 7 on the operations order, also known as the OPORD. Now, this is part 1 of a 2-part series. So after this video, I encourage you to find the next one and follow that along as well, because it'll give you even more information on this in general. My name is Captain Silver Beatty. I'm an APMS with the University of Montana Grizzly Battalion, and I'm going to be leading you through this lesson today. Now, if you've watched any of my videos in the past, you already know that QR code right down there is going to take you to a live website version of this exact same lesson. Now, the benefits of that, you can pull it up, follow along at your own pace, keep the URL for later, and just have it as a reference for yourself. The next benefit, there's some clickable links, embedded videos, things like that that are within that lesson on the website that you can use to find additional resources or just have on hand for additional references. Now, like I said, lesson read-aheads, resources, things like that, that first link right there is going to take you to an Army doctrine type document that's going to go a little bit deeper into the information that we're about to go over. So feel free to pull that up, save that as well. It's yours to use if you want. That next one, that's just a link right back to this exact same video that you're already watching. That way you have it as a reference to go back to later as well. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to watch a quick video clip from a movie that you've probably seen before called Armageddon. Now, in this video clip, you're going to see a few things related to a mission brief. And in case you haven't watched this before, let me give you just a little bit of a background. So in this clip, a massive meteor shower has destroyed the space shuttle Atlantis, which was orbiting Earth, and it bombards a swath of land from America's east coast from South Carolina all the way through Finland. Now, NASA discovered that an asteroid the size of Texas has passed through the asteroid belt and pushed forward a large amount of space debris. The asteroid is going to collide with Earth in 18 days, causing the destruction of the planet. A little scary, right? And NASA scientists, led by Dan Truman, plan to trigger a nuclear detonation inside the asteroid at a depth of 800 feet in order to split it in two, thus driving those pieces apart so both will fly past Earth. NASA contacts Harry Stamper, considered the best deep-sea oil driller in the entire world, for assistance. Now, Harry travels then to NASA with his daughter Grace to keep her away from her new boyfriend, AJ Frost, who is a drill operator for Harry. Now, Harry explains to NASA that he's going to need his team, including AJ, to carry out this mission. And NASA plans to launch 2 shuttles, Freedom and Independence, in order to increase the chances of success. Now, as you're watching this clip, I want you to do a couple things. I want you to try to identify where elements of the mission brief might go in a 5-paragraph OPORD. Specifically these elements: the situation and the mission. Now, with the situation, what elements of the situation are these characters facing? And with the mission, try to think of what a good mission statement could sound like for this brief. And keep in mind that mission statements always need to include the 5 W's. So the who, what, when, where, and why.
Okay, gentlemen, so here's the flight plan. Now let's keep the laughter to a minimum. I know this is not to scale. Both shuttles will take off Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. 67 minutes later, you're going to dock with the Russian space station to meet cosmonaut Andropov, who will refuel the shuttles with liquid O2. That's your fuel. Then you'll release and take a 60-hour trip toward the moon. Now, we only have one shot of landing on this rock, and that's precisely when the asteroid passes by the moon. You'll then use lunar gravity and burn your thrusters, slingshotting you around the moon, coming up behind the asteroid. You'll be upward of 11 Gs.
Yeah, I remember this one. It's where the coyote sat his ass down in a slingshot, and he strapped himself to an Acme rocket. Is that what we're doing here? Rocket. No, really, because it didn't work out too well for the coyote, Harry.
Well, actually, we have a lot better rockets than the coyote. Now, when you've finished your Roadrunner thrust move, you'll be moving at 22,500 miles per hour. coming around behind the asteroid where we're hoping that the tail debris will be cleared by the moon's gravity. And you'll land right here. That's it.
We got separate landing sites for each team. Softest parts of the rock as we can figure. At NASA, we don't take chances. We double up on everything. First team that hits 800 feet wins. Now, this rock is big, it's dense, it's got some gravity. You can walk around, but use your thrusters so you can work easier.
Okay, Mr. Truman, let's say that we actually do land on this. What's it gonna be like up there?
200 degrees in sunlight, minus 200 in the shade, canyons of razor-sharp rock, unpredictable gravitational conditions, unexpected eruptions, things like that.
Okay, so the scariest environment imaginable. Thanks. That's all you gotta say, scariest environment imaginable.
Okay, so you drill, you drop the nuke, and you leave. Now here's the key. You're gonna remote detonate the bomb. Before the asteroid passes this plane, zero barrier. You do that, and the remaining pieces of rock should be deflected enough to pass right by us. Now, if the bomb explodes after zero barrier, game's over.
All right, so now that we've watched that Armageddon mission briefing together, let's go through a few things to see what you caught. What do you think the elements were of the entire situation? Now, in hearing that briefing, what do you think an OPORD style mission statement could be for this brief? So in thinking through those and maybe some of your own experiences with OPORDs at leadership labs, FTXs, maybe just in class in general, do you think that what you watched was a clear and concise mission briefing that addressed all of the critical elements of the 5 Ws? Well, let's walk through them together. The who, freedom and independence cruise, right? The what was going to be drilling and nuclear detonation. The where? Well, that's going to happen on the asteroid that's on a collision course with Earth. The when, that needed to happen within the prescribed window of opportunity. And the why? To preserve the planet and save humanity. Now, what you watched was about a 2-minute, 40-second long video, but we could pull that all down into one statement in military context, right? So what is it? Mission. Freedom and Independence crews will conduct drilling and nuclear detonation on the asteroid that is on the collision course with Earth during the proper window of opportunity in order to preserve the planet and save humanity. That's it. That right there is a mission statement. So what do you think? Take what I just said, take some of the verbiage that you just heard, and what paragraph of the OPORD do you think the 5 Ws are identified? And why are they so critical? Well, if you know much about the OPORD, you already know. It's probably going to be in the mission paragraph, right? Mission statement. Now, it's critical because a clear understanding of these elements actually sets the stage for understanding the entire operation and enabling the mission success. Because we know with OPORDs, we're going to get a mission statement, but then we're going to get another paragraph that's going to tell the how. It's really going to give us a lot more detailed information. But we want that mission statement to just be a clear one-sentence statement that gives us that overall idea of what we're about to walk into. So what do I want you to know by the time you're done with this video? I want you to be able to explain the operations order, which you're going to hear me say the OPORD for the remainder of the lesson. We're going to also learn to describe the types of orders that you might come across. And then I want you to be able to identify just the 5 paragraphs of the OPORD. So let's get our minds in the right set with military stuff. So what are plans? What do we consider to be plans? Well, plans are just the visualizations of what the commander or the leader of the element wants to achieve, while an order is their way to deliver that information and convey their vision. So then what's an order and what does that look like? So orders, they're pretty self-explanatory, right? They can be done in several different ways, but they are a communication. They can be done verbally, so you can hear me talking. They can be done written. Now that's going to be something like what you're reading on the slide, or they can even be done in a way that's signaled. Now, what's a signaled order? Think of something like freeze. If you see this, you're being told to freeze. That's an order. Now, they also convey instructions from a superior, so somebody that's in charge, to a subordinate, somebody that they're in charge of. Pretty basic, right? We want our orders to follow a 5-paragraph format. So in terms of the OPORD, we're going to talk about 5-paragraph, very specific named paragraphs. Now that's your situation, your mission, your execution, sustainment, and command and signal. Now the technique that a commander or a leader might use to deliver that order is really up to them. And it's going to depend on things like the time that they have and the situation that you find yourself in. Sometimes you don't have time for a full-out written order, so it has to be done verbally. And other times the situation might require you to do a written order because you can't bring everybody in to tell them. And that leads us to verbal versus written, the advantages and disadvantages of both. So these might seem pretty common sense to you, but let's walk through them quickly. For verbal orders, our advantages, they can be done when operating in an extremely time-constrained environment. And they require rapid distribution, and they allow for that. So we don't have time to write out or type out a whole order and then give it to people. We just need to think it, say it, and have it delivered to them right then and there. Now, a disadvantage of your verbal order, sometimes when it's said quickly or it's just from my mouth to your ears, things might be misconstrued, misinterpreted, misunderstood, or important elements might just be overlooked altogether. Now, what about our written orders? Ones that are written out, typed out, and read. Well, the advantages of these, pretty big. They can contain both your text and graphics. So maps, overlays, symbols, something that can help you visualize the actual environment on a smaller scale. And then they provide and really focus on clarity, accuracy, and brevity. We want to keep it short and to the point. Now, it shortens the time, like I said, that you'd need to gather everybody together to actually brief them. You can just send out an OPORD to hundreds of people if you really wanted to, and it would be quick. It could take a long time to bring all of those people in for an order. Now, they're also very easy to edit, right? We live in a digital world, so most of our OPORDs these days are typed out. We can edit those very quickly and fix that rather than having to go around and saying, oh, I said the wrong thing, this is the change. Now, one of the big disadvantages to written orders, they can become really long and overwhelming and have a lot of information in there that's just not even actually pertinent to the mission. And so there's not really a lot of operational value. So that's your real down and dirty comparison between the two with the advantages and their disadvantages. Again, like the last slide said, the commander gets to decide how they're going to deliver that order, and they have to decide, is this the right way to distribute this? So what do you think? What's the purpose of having that standardized 5-paragraph format for our OPORD? Well, standardization of that disseminated information actually enables the subordinates to receive information more efficiently because they recognize that sequence and the components of the information that they're receiving. So every effort should be made to communicate the information in the order clearly with brevity in mind. Brevity being make it quick, concise, effective, and efficient. So what are our 3 types of military orders that we're going to focus on? Well, the entire lesson is focused around that center one, the OPORD, right? But we also have what we call a warning order, known as a warnord or a warno for those of us that have been around the military for a minute. That warno, just a preliminary quick order or a notice that there's more coming. I like to call it the heads up. It also follows the 5-paragraph format of just having the 5 W's. So we want to use that as a leader. We just received an operations order and we're going to give one to our subordinates at our level. But we want to let our subordinate leaders know quickly, hey, this is coming. So you just give them those 5 W's and then you go back and you're planning the rest of your operation. Now, of course, we have the OPORD. We already know this is a directive that's issued by the commander to their subordinates for the purpose of effecting that coordinated execution of your operation. This is just the order. Now we have what I like to think of as the bane of our existence in the Army, called the Fragmentary Order, also known as the FragOrD. Most of us call it a Frago. This is an abbreviated operation order that's issued as needed to either change or modify the order that you've already given, or execute a branch or sequel to the current operation. This is just the change. So as we know, most of our plans are going to change. Fragos are going to happen. We can have this big, beautiful picture of exactly what we want to happen and what we visualize, but the environment changes, the situation changes. Sometimes we need to do Fragos so that everybody else understands, hey, we're not doing what I originally told you, we're switching it up a little bit. So that's where your Fragos come in. Now, I want you to keep something in mind. The amount of detail that's provided in a plan or your order depends on a lot of different factors, including the cohesion and experience of your subordinate units or your subordinates in general, and the complexity of the operation. So effective plans and orders actually encourage subordinates' initiative by providing the what and why of their tasks. They leave how to perform those tasks up to the subordinates. Now, to maintain clarity and simplicity, planners have to keep that base plan or order as short and concise as possible. They address the detailed information in instructions in what we call attachments, if they absolutely need to. Now, when you're thinking of tactical OPORDs, that looks just a little bit different, but really the ultimate thing with this is just keep your information to the base level of knowledge that it needs to be, and keep the proper amount of detail in those orders as well. I like to say when you're delivering an OPORD, as long as the most junior member of that OPORD brief that's listening can understand what you're saying, you're good to go. Now there's some additional types of military orders. We're going to touch on these very briefly. We have a planning order or a plan ord, and that's just a directive that provides detailed planning guidance and initiates the development of operational plans or orders. That's way higher than our level. That's not anything that we need to worry about in this particular lesson. Same with the alert ord or the alert order. That's a notification to units or commands to prepare for a potential operation. Something might happen and we just want you to be ready. Now, an execute order, an XORD, is an authoritative directive that initiates those military operations as specified in some approved plan. These are all happening at levels way higher than even me at this point, right? Now, a prepare to deploy order or PTDO, that's a directive that just instructs the units to get their personnel ready and their equipment ready for a potential deployment without initiating any movement yet. Prepare to take off. Now, these types of orders, like I said, are going to be received from a joint headquarters far higher, way higher pay grade level than me, you, most of the people that you probably know. So what do you think? Let's get back into the operations order. Why is it critical that everyone, not just the leadership, has a complete understanding of your mission? Well, that's common sense. Everyone has to know their part and how it ties to the collective mission. And knowledge of the adjacent and superior responsibilities creates kind of this base of knowledge or this bigger picture that identifies critical points or actions within the execution of that mission. And that might be accomplished by others if the responsible parties become incapacitated. So you need to know what the people to your left and right, up and down are kind of responsible for, just in case you have to step into those spots. So let's get right back into the OPORD. This is issued by a leader to direct the subordinates' actions. That just means I'm going to tell you, my follower, what you need to do. It contains all the information necessary to execute some sort of an operation. It really should focus on the what to do, not necessarily the weeds of how to do it. So it's going to provide your subordinates critical information for planning and then conducting their portion of that operation. And we call that non-prescriptive. It allows for their own creativity. So I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. You know your people. You know how to do these types of things. You do what you need to make my mission successful. So in part of that, it also explains why the mission is so important. And that creates what we call buy-in. We want our people to understand the importance of what we're doing and the purpose so that they put their full effort into it and we all accomplish this together. So why do we break that OPORD into 5 subcategories, or what we call the paragraphs, and use that template? Well, it provides that structure, right? It helps to mitigate the potential for forgetting or leaving out critical elements. So we follow shells, we follow a template, we follow those 5 paragraphs in a specific order for a reason, so we don't forget anything. We don't leave anything out and end up halfway through an operation and go, oh shoot, what do we do now? It's all enveloped within that OPORD. So the OPORD and the 5 paragraphs. Again, hopefully you have a little bit of experience with this, but if you don't know and this is fresh to you, here's what that OPORD looks like in terms of the paragraphs and the order they go in. Now, there's a situation first. That's going to focus on your operational situation, and it has 2 primary subparagraphs. Understand that an OPORD actually has a ton of subparagraph information and different things that are involved. We're keeping this lesson at a very base level. So you're going to have enemy force information in there, their disposition and array, and the same thing for your friendly forces. Then we get into the mission. That's called a paragraph. It's really just 1 sentence. 2 sentences if you say it twice like you're supposed to. These are your 5 W's. This is your who, which is your unit responsible, the what type of operation are we doing, the when, date and time that we're going to execute this, the where, the location of the operation, and the why, the purpose. So you'll see there the what is kind of your task and your why is purpose. You'll hear things like in vicinity of, that's your location, in order to, that's the purpose, no later than, that's your when. So you'll hear those types of terms within that, but it's a very brief statement, just like you saw at the beginning of this lesson. Now, execution paragraph, that's a big one. This one's very important. This is truly your meat and potatoes of an operation because it gives that mission-specific guideline. And it includes your commander's intent, which is essentially what the commander says success looks like this. The ultimate conditions that have to be met for them to say this was a successful operation. And it also has that big long piece called the CONOP, or the concept of operations. This is the how. This is the, okay, I know what we're doing, but how are we going to do that? What does the leader, the commander envision for how we're going to get from place to place, what we're going to do if, a lot of different pieces and parts. This is also around when you'll see them start referring to their terrain model. So they'll orient you to a terrain model, which is kind of that 3D replica of your area of operations. And then they'll walk piece by piece, step by step, from when you leave your assembly area to when you're finished with your actions on. Now you'll see down there, those are the 2 most important sections, your mission and execution, because they have that operational task and purpose and all of that guidance that shows the executional requirements. Now our last 2 paragraphs start with sustainment. This is kind of the part where we explain the logistical methods and any supplies that are necessary to successfully execute this mission. That includes who's responsible for those logistics as well. And a lot of times you're going to see this briefed at a platoon or higher level by the NCO counterpart of the commander in charge. So in a platoon level, the platoon sergeant will brief this. And that's because the platoon sergeant, the NCO, your first sergeant, depending on the level, they're what we call the beans and bullets person. So they're in charge of making sure we've got food and we've got ammo. And there's a lot of other stuff that comes with that sustainment paragraph as well. Now for command and signal, that's your last paragraph. That's going to list the operational succession of command. So if I'm briefing you, who's in charge if I go down? And then who's in charge? And then who's in charge? That's your succession of command. It also outlines all the communication procedures, what we're going to use. We call something a PACE plan. That's your communications plan that lists your primary, your alternate, your contingency, and your emergency, how you're going to communicate. If you're using radios, it's going to talk about what channel or frequency you're going to be on. And then it's actually going to get into your call signs and passwords. So your challenge and password, your number combination, your running password, all of those things are involved in your command and signal paragraph. So what do you think here? Which paragraph do you think you should spend the most time on when you're issuing your order? Well, this should be execution because people need to hear and see exactly what your plan is to finish this operation. So why is a clear understanding of that paragraph so critical? Because that's where that shared vision happens and ensures that every single person knows his or her responsibilities and the responsibilities of the people to their left and right. That's all part of the execution paragraph. That's usually the longest one that's being briefed, and it's the longest one that's being planned. So I want you to keep this in mind as well. Orders disseminate the information that the commander deems necessary and important for his or her subordinates to know and understand. They're written, and they can even include that graphical depiction that overlays the symbols, the written explanation of how the commander sees an operation actually being conducted. It includes one of the most important aspects of the order, their intent, the commander's intent. And that's that clear, concise statement that enables the commander to specifically say, this is what success looks like. The order, while being specific, doesn't necessarily prescribe exactly how you're supposed to do the things, right? It allows for that creativity, like I said. It provides that necessary guidance that keeps the subordinate commanders able to do their own planning for their portion of this operation. Now, subordinate commanders are encouraged to think creatively when it comes to this. They know their people, they know who they're assigned to, they know what they're capable of. So, how do clear and concise OPORDs enable our greater potential for mission success? Again, common sense. When everybody knows his or her responsibilities and those to their left and right, it helps us have this common understanding. And then it can create contingencies through that same shared vision of what must occur, and that enhances our ability to have that mission success. What that essentially means is that if we know clear and concisely who is doing what, if we have to take over, there's really a seamless transition and we're still able to move on, continue because we know our job and those around us. So why is it important for Army leaders to provide subordinates with information in that specific format? Again, that structure is important. It's a common methodology that helps in our comprehension, and it relates that critical information in a common language, clear and concise. Are you sensing a little bit of a theme here? All right, so that is the first part of this OPORD lesson. Let's just check real quick and make sure you understand the basics. So which one of those three types of orders are an abbreviated form that's issued as needed after an operation order to make sure that they understand there's changes or modifications? Is that going to be your operation order, your fragmentary order, a verbal order, or a warning order? Now hopefully you're saying a fragmentary order or a frago. That's the change, right? So what's the purpose of an operation order? Is it to convey instructions in a clear, standard, simple format? What about permitting subordinates to prepare their supporting orders? Does it provide tasks, activities, constraints, and coordinating instructions that are necessary for their mission accomplishment? Well, yes, yes, and yes. All of the above. That's the purpose of our operation order. Now, of those three types of orders, which one is that preliminary notice of an order or an action to follow? Which one do we call the heads up? Is it the operation, verbal, warning, or fragmentary? It's the warning order, right? Hey, warning, heads up, this is coming. So a warno or a warnord. All right, now as we close all of this up, I hope you feel a little bit better about the operations order, some information about orders themselves, and really feel more comfortable diving into the next part of this lesson. I hope you're able to explain that operations order, the three types of orders, remember, warno, OPORD, frago, the heads up, the order, and the change. And I hope you're able to identify those 5 paragraphs of the OPORD. And remember, they have to stay in order. So situation, mission, execution, sustainment, command, and signal. I appreciate your time sticking with me through this lesson. Make sure you hop on over and watch part 2 of this series so that you get a better understanding of the operations order in general. And if you have any questions, I highly encourage that you go find your own ROTC advisor or instructor, maybe a high-speed MS3 or MS4. Get those questions answered so that you can be a better part of that entire team the next time you're in part of an operations order. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next one.